We are now happy to welcome Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, whose America Dissected podcast explores scientific discoveries, trillion-dollar policies, and cultural trends that are changing the world. Thanks so much for joining us, Dr. El-Sayed.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
You have been a healthcare provider, professor, health officer in an urban health department. You've run for a political office, and now you host a podcast. Where did you learn the most about public health? Who were your best teachers, and what are your most important lessons learned?
Well, I'll tell you, I think all of us are going through a journey, and we're always learning more. I can look at every step of the path that I've been able to walk and point to a number of lessons that I've learned as even a medical student in New York City. I learned how to listen, and I think that's one of the most important tools that we bring to public health, and often we forget that tool. As a professor in epidemiology, I learned a lot about the importance of metrics and evaluation in asking whether or not we're doing the right thing and how well we're doing it and what the unintended consequences might be. I'm really grateful to the mentorship of a longtime mentor of mine, Sandro Galea, who mentored me through much of my academic career. As a health officer, I learned a lot about how you put these kinds of lessons in practice, and the fierce urgency of now, as Dr. Martin Luther King would put it, the recognition that we have a responsibility to act and we can't always wait for the research. And then finally, as a politician and public communicator, I learned a lot about what people actually pay attention to and why. And as important as empirics are to guiding what we do, we've got to be really good at telling the story of what we do and why it matters. And I think one of the distinct, I would say, misgivings that I have about this moment, this era of COVID-19, is that sometimes we fail to tell the story of what we do and why. And how important it is. And I think when you take all those things together, the ability to listen, the ability to engage with serious empirics, the ability to make policy on the ground, and finally the responsibility to tell stories and communicate, I find those all to be lessons that are really important on a public health journey. And I hope that I continue to learn. There is so much out there that all of us have yet to learn, and I hope that we can always be students in that work.
Why did you think it was important to come to Denver to do a live taping of your podcast at the APHA annual meeting?
I'm really excited about the conversation that we're going to have, and we're going to be talking about public health communication. It's one of those things that we all sort of learn, but I think sometimes we don't test our hypotheses about what works. And we know that our podcast is highly listened to by public health folks, and we wanted to bring the podcast to folks and have this conversation in the setting of the APHA annual conference, because the people we'll be speaking with and speaking to in the live taping are people who are doing this work every day. And what better way to stress test the conversation that we're having than to make sure that it is relevant and engaged with the folks who are actively doing this work every single day. I also think that right now, more than ever, the community aspect of what we do is so important. And one of the things that COVID took away from us is each other. And I think the opportunity to come back together, to engage with one another, to have those interstitial conversations that make a meeting what it really is, I think was really important. So we're really looking forward to the show.
Now, as a former political candidate, what do you wish public health professionals knew about the political system, and what advice would you give them on how to engage as advocates or candidates?
As much as health is not partisan, it is political. And I think one of the things that took a lot of people by surprise in this moment was how quickly and the ferocity with which politics put itself into public health in the context of the pandemic in ways that very much damaged our capacity to intervene on the pandemic in local, state, and national contexts. And so, we have to engage with politics, lest politics engage with us. And I think being able to do so on our terms and recognizing that our values are the well-being of other people and the engagement of science and expertise in that process, and be willing to wage our values in the world, recognizing the political process for what it is, that we can't run away from it. The fact that not everybody gets to live a long, healthy life means that that is a limited resource, and politics ultimately is the way we divide and apportion limited resources, that our work is political, and we have a responsibility always to be advocating for that work. And then finally, one of the most important aspects of public health, particularly in this moment, is the recognition that we have to be fighters for equity. And there are people who don't believe in that concept. And insofar as our work is about the equitable distribution of scarce resources, and that we are fighters for that, then we have to stand up, proclaim our values loudly, and fight for them, with the tools of science and with the tools of expertise and knowledge, and do so calmly, knowing that we are fighting for people against whom the world has often denied a set of resources, and our job is to make sure that they're there equitably, and they're there sustainably.
Dr. El-Sayed, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.